Welcome to Module 1, Solution Architect Series, Implement Project Governance for Power Platform and Dynamics 365. This module is part of the Solution Architect Design Microsoft Power Platform Solutions learning path. Let's get started. Solution Architect Series, Implement Project Governance for Power Platform and Dynamics 365. Introduction to Project Governance. A solution architect for Microsoft Power Platform plays a key role on a project. Typically, solution architects implement governance, change processes, and monitor the project progress. How the solution architect helps. Specifically, the solution architect can make sure that requirements are in scope and nothing is overpromised. Therefore, the solution architect will need to manage the project scope and keep the project on track. Keeping a project moving along might seem simple, but in practice, it requires the solution architect to be proactive in managing the project, even when a project manager is involved. Rather than failing due to the technical capabilities of team members, most projects fail because the scope of the project wasn't managed or because issues weren't addressed as they occurred. During the project, the solution architect is a key member of a governance team. As scope or requirements change, they are typically involved in review and will prevent scope creep from happening. The solution architect might not be the originator or decision maker behind the governance, but they do provide valuable inputs and help implement guidance. The solution architect can help project governance by being a key member of the governance team, helping manage changes in scope and requirements, looking out for issues in the requirements, including regulatory, compliance, auditing, and security, avoiding overpromising and helping to encourage small steps towards a large goal. The solution architect will be seen by other project members as the technical leader of a project. Other team members will look at how the solution architect handles changes in scope and will emulate that approach in the performance of their own duties in relation to governance of the project. Keep a project on track. Consider the projects that you've worked on as a project team member and then answer these questions. Did the project have a governance process? If a governance process was established, was it followed? Were risks documented and mitigated? Was a change control process established? How effective were these processes and could they have been improved? The solution architect might have to address these issues. Before exploring these issues in depth, you should know more about project governance. Next unit, project governance. Project governance. Project governance is not project management, though some overlap occurs. Project governance is the framework within which decisions about the project are made. Project governance is a critical element of project. Performing it badly or not at all will lead to the project's failure. Note, it is better to have any project governance process than none at all. Governance in a project. Projects are not fixed. During a project, challenges will arise that will need to be dealt with. If these challenges are ignored, then what was originally a small question could turn into a major problem. If a project excessively focuses on issues as they occur, the project might fail to move forward. Having a project governance process in place will assist a project manager in handling concerns as they arise. Project governance is primarily about decision making within the project and typically answers the following questions. Authority. Who makes the decision? Does that person have the experience and expertise to make the right decision? Process. How are decisions made? How do you balance impact analysis against the need for timely decisions? Evidence. What information is required to make a decision? How do you perform analysis of the impact? Any governance process should be aligned with contractual terms for changes that are agreed to by the customer. Ideally, in the statement of work for a project, the decision-making process should be defined with the ultimate authority named. Often, your customer, whether internal or external, will have their own governance process. However, this process might have gaps or might not be relevant to Microsoft Power Platform. Projects that are implemented by using Microsoft Power Platform can be different from projects that customers have previously experienced. The existing governance process might not be relevant in the speed of decision-making or in the level of required information. The solution architect needs to ensure that the governance process meets the needs of a Microsoft Power Platform project. A solution architect will need to either adopt the existing process or build a hybrid process. Important. If no process is in place, the solution architect should push for the creation of a governance process or create one themselves. Governance processes. At a minimum, a project should assess risks, documentation of risks, evaluation of risks, and risk mitigation that is implemented. Issues, documentation of issues, and a process for evaluation of issues. Changes, documentation of changes, and a formal change control process. Note: this module does not cover how to implement a governance process. However, it is concerned with making the solution architect aware that they must ensure that a governance process in place for the project that meets the needs of the project. Your project governance experience. Consider the projects that you've worked on as a project team member and then answer the questions. How were issues logged? Who was allowed to raise an issue? Were issues evaluated? Who performed the evaluation? How were changes raised? Were these processes at the appropriate level for your project? How could you have improved them? The next unit further explains the solution architect's role in the project governance. Next unit, solution architect's role in project governance. Solution architect's role in project governance. Often, a solution architect role in the project will be to use their experience and expertise to evaluate issues and changes. However, monitoring change in a project is excessively simple, especially in Microsoft Power Platform. Consequently, the solution architect could become overly focused on monitoring change rather than ensuring that the project moves forward. Therefore, the solution architect should guide other project team members in performing evaluation and analysis of issues and changes. One challenge that new solution architects face is the process of leaving the role of doer into a role of leading and guiding others. A solution architect needs to be available to other project team members and to support their growth. Involvement in defining governance. With Microsoft Power Platform projects, making changes can be simpler. However, making several small changes and having a poor governance process can cause a project to fail. For instance, the solution architect needs to make sure that the process to evaluate change doesn't take longer than implementing the change. It is imperative that the solution architect is involved in defining the process and procedures for project governance. Their involvement helps ensure that the processes and procedures are appropriate for Microsoft Power Platform technologies that are used and that they don't cause unnecessary overhead. Provide actionable feedback. The solution architect is often the intermediary between the customer and team members. Therefore, they need to provide feedback to both parties. Primary feedback should be provided to help shape the solution. Feedback can happen as early as the creation of the request for proposal, RFP, or statement of work, SOW. However, feedback should be performed on an ongoing basis throughout the project. The solution architect is responsible for ensuring that feedback is constructive and actionable. Handle bad news. Occasionally, the solution architect provides feedback about an issue that might not be well received. Bad news does not improve with time. The solution architect must acknowledge and share bad news early in the process. Examples of bad news that the solution architect shouldn't withhold: the cost of user licenses will increase by 87% if they move ahead with the requirement as written. The feature is being deprecated. With the added relationship, the data import will now take 30 days. Data migration has identified 200 new columns. From this data, 3 new undocumented processes have been discovered. Keep it actionable. Something is amiss. No clear call to action. Team member is left trying to figure out what the problem is. Confirming the X setting in Microsoft Docs, I think it might be wrong. Clear problem statement and a place to look. The solution architect needs to ensure that feedback, especially bad news, is actionable. Stating that something is amiss is pointless because it provides no clear call to action and the recipient is left trying to figure out what the issue might be. Instead, the solution architect should construct a clear problem statement and then provide references and the potential impact on the project. Consider projects that you have been involved in and then recall how bad news was handled and what effect it had on the project. Help people reach the same conclusion. Though the solution architect might have the most expertise, you need to help the project team members and customer reach the resolution to an issue. Stating that won't work will likely cause someone to feel defensive. The solution architect should always be constructive and avoid saying no too often. Instead, offer options or negotiate the requirements. You should ask leading questions such as, will that cause 1 million Power Automate cloud flows to be run with that configuration? Asking a leading question will encourage the person to think about the impact of their proposal. Remember, the person might not have the overall view of the project that the solution architect has. If you have concerns about a proposed solution or a change, you need to highlight your concern, but encourage the person to think through and resolve the concern. Reviewing the work of others is a key task for the solution architect. The difference between reviewing what someone has done and doing the work yourself is minuscule. When reviewing the work of others, the solution architect needs to be constructive and provide suggestions on where to look for answers. For example, when it is unclear that a solid design has been proposed, the solution architect might encourage the creation of a proof of concept or other tests to validate the proposed solution. Essentially, the role of a solution architect is to constantly talk to the people who are involved in the project to ensure that the vision of the project is achieved. Unsuccessful solution architects hide from the team and spend time updating their architecture designs rather than collaborating with the team and helping them discover solutions. The next unit describes the techniques that a solution architect can use on a project. Next unit: techniques for keeping a project on track. Techniques for keeping a project on track. The solution architect should ensure that the project is always moving toward the project's goals. Additionally, the solution architect should establish good practices to ensure that the customer and team members are aware of the project's current status and of the issues that affect its progress. Scenarios for failure. Common areas of failure in a project include not documenting assumptions, not conducting risk management, excessive analysis and impact assessment, overpromising, designing with incorrect assumptions or requirements, organizational politics, not having buy-in from senior management, inability to have a complete enterprise vision. This list is not exhaustive. Many other factors can cause project failure. Scenarios for success. Good projects have the following characteristics: knowing what a finished project looks like from the customer's perspective, not yours. Having a change control board to manage change. Managing risk proactively. Being more agile. Performing project checkpoints to assess how you are doing. Having retrospectives and evaluating lessons learned to assess how you did. This list is not exhaustive, and many more things that go into making a project successful. Project checkpoints. The solution architect should insist on establishing a way to measure progress of the project. They should also implement regular progress reporting and have checkpoints at critical points in the project. For example, the solution architect can use a simple red, yellow and green color coding system. The previous screenshot highlights the red, yellow and green color coding concept, which provides a quick glance at the project's visual health and overall condition of each area. Good teams raise issues early, mitigate the issue and escalate to red without last-minute surprises. This exact method doesn't have to be used, but the solution architect should agree on a simple health check process. Retrospectives. At regular points in the project, the solution architect should evaluate how the project performed. Waiting until the end of the project to review how it performed is useless because it doesn't allow the team members to make corrections. It is important to gain an understanding of your customers' opinions of your performance so that you can address their concerns immediately. The solution architect should establish checkpoints to look back at progress. Before the checkpoint, the solution architect should gather feedback from inside and outside the project team. During the checkpoint meeting, the solution architect should push for no-fault discussions. The aim is to turn failures into goals for the next checkpoint review. The next unit examines how the solution architect works as part of a team. Next unit, work as a team. Work as a team. The solution architect will generally be the most experienced person on a project and might be the most skilled in many tasks in a project. However, a solution architect can't do everything alone. The solution architect needs to break down the work and delegate it to the most appropriate team member. Essentially, the solution architect owns the overall vision of the project's technical solution and needs to communicate that vision to the team. Be a role model. In any project, the solution architect is visible to other team members and will naturally be seen as a role model. The engagement manager and project manager lead the project. However, the solution architect is considered the real leader and can set the tone and pace for how the team works. Therefore, the solution architect is responsible for setting an example for others to follow. Furthermore, solution architect might be responsible for increasing the skills and experience of project team members, mentoring them and encouraging them to take more responsibility and gain new skills. Assess team skills. A solution architect establishes the breakdown that will be used for the functional and technical design. As a solution architect, you seldom get to choose your team, and not everyone on a team can be a top performer. The solution architect must learn how to assess the team members' skills and weaknesses to assign the correct tasks to the correct team members. Solution architects shouldn't ask for a resume to gauge how much a specific team member knows about Microsoft Power Platform. However, they should have a set of probing discussion questions to test knowledge, such as asking the team member when they should use managed instead of unmanaged solutions, or when they should use business rules or Power Automate cloud flows. The solution architect could also assign small tasks or proof of concepts to team members and then assess the results. Additionally, the solution architect should encourage the team member to explain their proposed solution to better understand their thought processes. The solution architect could create a skills matrix as the project evolves to enable a project to apply the strengths of the team to succeed. Stay congruent. The solution architect often brings considerable knowledge and experience and is usually the person on the team who sees the broader view. The solution architect should not assume that everyone else has the same skills, knowledge, experience, or understanding of the project. Making assumptions and generalizations can be risky. A key role of the solution architect is to communicate information to team members at the right time. Communication should be clear and relevant to each team member. Emails might not be sufficient, so the solution architect should talk regularly with team members to make sure that everyone is in congruence. Remember, communication is mutual, so it's important to listen to team members. Break down the work. A typical task for solution architects is to divide the work and assign it to team members. The solution architect should look for logical divisions of functionality in the application, such as customer service versus customer acquisition. The solution architect should look for horizontal solution features such as document management or computer telephony integration, CTI. Establish standards. Standards are important on any project for the team to follow. Some elements in Microsoft Power Platform are more difficult to change later, such as the schema prefix or table and column names. The solution architect should define standards to ensure consistency for the following elements. Naming of components, column data types, UI, the options for form layouts, when to use multiple forms and so on. Automation, when to use different automation options such as Power Automate cloud flows, classic workflow, business rules or client script. Security, when to use roles, column security, hierarchical security and so on. Development, for example, define early versus late bound, error handling, and so on. The solution architect should use Microsoft documentation such as model-driven apps best practices, app design best practices, and developer best practices. Work environments. The solution architect is responsible for defining how configuration and development will occur. This definition will depend on many factors, including the skills of the team and whether the team is co-located or if they're dispersed remotely. The development environment topology needs to be determined and some type of testing environments will be needed. Remember, Microsoft Power Platform does not provide version control tracking by default. Consider projects that you've been involved in and then ask yourself what else the solution architect might have done to help teams work better together. Let's check our knowledge. Check your knowledge. Answer the following questions to see what you've learned. You have joined a new Power Platform project as a solution architect. The customer has a project governance process. You evaluate the process and decide that it is not appropriate for the project. What should you do? Implement an agile methodology, create a hybrid process, use the customer's process, create a risk register. I'm going to select create a hybrid process. Which one of the following statements is true regarding feedback? Feedback must always be positive. Feedback should be left until project checkpoints. Feedback must always be constructive. Feedback is provided only by team members. I'm going to go with feedback must always be constructive. How should a solution architect assess the skills of the team? Require team members to be certified in Power Platform. Review the resumes of each team member. Ask team members to complete a test of questions about customizing Power Platform. Ask each team member probing questions. I'm going to choose the last one. And here's the answers. All of those were correct. Let's have a look at the summary of this unit. Summary. Building business solutions by using Microsoft Power Platform is a team effort that requires coordination and planning to succeed. Solution architects are often the ones who link a project team together. In this module, you learned about the role of the solution architect in relation to project governance, including helping to define the project governance process, driving the project forward by implementing processes, reviewing others' work, providing actionable feedback. Next steps. Your next steps are to look at Microsoft Power Platform architecture to learn about its capabilities and how to use its strengths to design solutions to business problems. For more information, see Use Best Practices to Secure and Govern Microsoft Power Platform Environments and Success by Design. I'll put links to these extra pages that have been referenced during this module in the description below.